Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, dear panelists and webinar participants. I am Maria Nazarova, the president of the Universal Peace Federation in Russia, and I am pleased to welcome everyone to today's webinar, which is dedicated to the Bering Strait Undersea Tunnel project. Before we get started, let me make a little technical announcement. Our webinar will be simultaneously translated into Russian. So those who would like to listen to it, please select Russian on the globe at the bottom of the screen. We will also have a Q&A session, so I suggest actively using it, the question and answer button, which is also located at the bottom of the screen. As you may know, Universal Peace Federation widely supports the tunnel under the Bering Strait project as part of the International Peace Highway, the Peace Road. This year marks 40 years since our founders, Dr. Sun Myung Moon and Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, announced the importance of the project. Since then, we have been trying to popularize it. Unlike walls, bridges and roads can shorten distance and promote peace. We believe that this webinar will be one of the steps that will bring us closer to the implementation of the project. And let's have a good discussion on the prospects for the construction of the Bering Strait Undersea Tunnel. Moreover, our panelists on today's program, I would say probably know everything about this project. So let me introduce our esteemed speakers. Mr. Louis Cerny, International Railroad Consultant, former Executive Director of American Railway Engineering Association from the United States of America. Mr. Louis Cerny is a registered professional engineer in Mississippi, USA. He is the author of numerous technical articles in trade magazines and technical bulletins and has made presentations at many technical meetings. His inspection and study of railway construction and maintenance include inspections in the United States and of major projects in China and South America. And he has professional experience regarding high-speed lines, including the maglev in China and TGV in France. Mr. Cerny is directly involved in planning for a tunnel under the Bering Strait. Dr. Viktor Razbegin from Russia is a scientist in the field of spatial economy, investment planning, soil mechanism, foundation engineering, and underground construction. He works for the Russian Research Center of Construction at the Peter Rim-Sorokin and Nikolai Kondratiev International Institute and the international non-profit corporation Inter-Hemispheric Bering Strait Tunnel and Railroad Group. He was a deputy chair of the Council for the Study of Productive Forces of the Russian Ministry of Economic Development and the Russian Academy of Sciences. He is a member of the Council for the Development of the Far East, the Arctic, and the Antarctic under the Federation Council of Russia. Chief editor of Soil Mechanics and Foundation Engineering, deputy chief editor of Modern Productive Forces, and governing partner of the Intel Consulting Limited. And Dr. Peter Stockdale, a policy analyst specializing in environment, Indigenous, and intergovernmental affairs from Canada. He is the host of the Kichi Trails, bringing back ancient roots and fostering reconciliation within the indigenous people of Canada, and founder and coordinator of the Free the Falls, designed to protect 7,000-year-old indigenous waterfalls and capital. He is co-founder of the Department of Peace Ottawa Canada branch, co-founder of the Civilian Peace Service Canada, and founder of the City of Peace Ottawa. He is the founder and chair for 10 years of the Conflict Prevention Working Group for Peace Build Canada. So it's my pleasure now to invite our first speaker today, Mr. Louis Cerny, International Railroad Consultant, former Executive Director of American Railway Engineering Association from the United States of America. Mr. Louis Cerny, the floor is yours. Mr. Cerny, please turn on your mic.
Yes, excuse me for that.
Thank you.
To begin with, let me thank the organizers of this session for the opportunity to discuss a project that would mark the most significant example of Russian and American cooperative achievement since Russian and American armies joined at the Elbe River in Germany on April 26, 1945. But instead of a military victory, we can envision Russian and American tunnel workers meeting in a victory of peace at a point under the Bering Strait as they complete a railroad tunnel that will join by land transportation the world's 5 largest continents. A railroad connecting the continents of North America and Asia and their rail networks will be of great benefit to the world's future. But before explaining further, I need to make a confession. When I first heard about the Bering Strait Tunnel and Railroad project, I was extremely skeptical and thought that this was a crazy idea. Why go all the way north to the Bering Strait and then come back south when we already have good shipping routes across the Pacific Ocean? But I found that the usual maps of the world are based on being correct near the equator, but they greatly exaggerate the distances in the far north. When a polar map or a world globe is used, the value of a land transportation route via a Bering Strait tunnel is obvious. A railroad via a Bering Strait tunnel has several advantages over ocean shipping between Eastern Asia and North America that can help provide financial justification for the project. Let's consider shipping a container from an inland city in Eastern Russia or China to an inland city in the United States. Let's use Beijing to Chicago as an example. The first advantage of using the railroad is that it would save 2 land-to-water transfers. The container now has to move by land from Beijing to a port such as Tianjin, then go by ship to a port such as Los Angeles, and then by rail to Chicago. These land-water transfers can be expensive and especially time-consuming when the loading of and unloading of large container ships are considered. The train can make one continuous trip, and the difference between the Russian track gauge and the gauge that is standard in North America, China, and Korea can be taken care of by various designs of variable gauge bogies on the vehicles or dual gauge track. The second advantage is that the all-rail route will be considerably shorter than the rail-water rail route. Because of the Great Circle route used by the railroad, the container would have less distance to travel. A straight line from Beijing to Chicago actually goes north of the proposed tunnel location. The third advantage of the all-rail route is speed. A 4-day schedule for containers from Harbin, China to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada is possible using a running speed of 70 miles an hour and averaging 55 miles an hour. 3 days would get from Edmonton to Northeast Russia, where connections would be made to railway main lines in Russia. Edmonton has high-capacity rail connections to the rest of North America, and Harbin has high-capacity connections to the rest of China. These 3- and 4-day transit times are much shorter than those achieved by the fastest ocean container ship. Passenger trains can run at the same speed as these fast freights so as to maximize capacity of this electrified double-track railroad. These trains hauling highway vehicles can be thought of as a segment of the Peace Road. How will this new North America to Asia railroad via a Bering Strait tunnel improve the world ecology? Electric trains powered by renewable energy will reduce the need for fossil fuel-powered ships. Less ships will mean less disturbance of marine life and less coastal areas needed for port facilities. The tunnel will cause no visible changes to the Bering Strait. So this tunnel and railroad project sounds very beneficial, but can it actually be built? When we compared this project to the rail tunnel under the English Channel from France to England, we find that the Bering Strait is no deeper than the English Channel, and because of 2 islands in the Bering Strait, the longest continuous underwater distance is no longer than with the English Channel tunnel. The Bering Strait is not a highly seismic zone, and the rock does not appear to present any special problems. But what about permafrost for the long stretches of new double-track electrified railroad east and west of the tunnel? Permafrost is an issue which has many proven engineering solutions, as shown by the successful construction and operation of the railroad to Tibet in China, which was built under more difficult borderline permafrost conditions. The many railroads in Russia built on permafrost also show that permafrost has numerous solutions. It should also be mentioned that the proposed alignment of the railroad can always stay south of the Arctic Circle. So there is no reason this railroad cannot be built. It is not a mission to take humans to Mars with many unknowns. It is a very large project, but one which we can confidently engineer. How much can a modern electrified double-track railroad carry? Capacity is measured in international containers. International container cargo is usually measured in TEUs, or 20-foot equivalent units, which means the equivalent of a 20-foot container. A current double-track railroad platform in North America could carry 5.3 TEUs, which is equal to two 53-foot containers. By using best existing technology, the use of so-called distributed power, where locomotives are spaced throughout the train but controlled from the locomotive, longer trains can operate without increasing longitudinal stresses in the couplers and wagon frames. The latest train control and signaling allows closer intervals between trains than before. With trains of this type, 300 or more double-stack container platforms are possible, and with an interval between trains of 12 minutes and 20 hours of track time each day, allowing 4 hours for maintenance and contingencies, this is about 160,000 TEUs in each direction, or 320,000 TEUs total each day. This can be compared with an estimate of about 150 TEUs worth of container per day passing through the Suez Canal, averaging 75,000 in each direction, in 2018. In terms of haulage of tonnage of bulk freight, individual main tracks on railroads have carried over 1 million tons in one direction in a single day, such as in the Powder River Basin in the United States. Thus, a yearly tonnage on a double-track railroad of over 600 million tons per year is possible within existing technology. 600 million tons per year is the capacity of the Panama Canal since the third lock project was finished, with actual recent tonnages in the 400 million range. In addition to Russia and the United States, the railroad would be directly beneficial to Canada, China, Korea, and that of course assumes the resolution of the division of that country, as well as Mexico, Vietnam, the Middle East, and Europe via existing railroads. Also, there is construction underway of railroad connections to additional Asian countries. With the railroad connecting North America and Asia, Alaska and Northeast Russia can envision a future where they are on an artery of the international flow of commerce, equivalent to the Suez or Panama Canal, allowing excellent access to international markets for their products and a prosperous population with good, dependable jobs. In closing, let me say that we all understand that great projects take time, and we all understand that a railroad connecting the Asia and North America via a tunnel under the Bering Strait will be one of the greatest civil engineering projects in history. Perhaps a target date for its completion could be April 26, 2045, when Russian and Americans again, a century later, meet in triumphant accomplishment in the cause of peace. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Cerny. I really liked your positive approach and the fact that you recalled an important event of World War II, the meeting on the Elbe River. I'm sure our listeners will be happy to ask you many questions. Until then, let's give the floor to our next speaker, Dr. Viktor Razbegin, co-founder of the Interhemispheric Bering Strait Tunnel and Railroad Group from the Russian Federation. Dr. Razbegin. Please turn on your mic, please, Dr. Razbegin.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, thank you for organizers for unique chance to say some words about this beautiful project. I have heard about this project first time in 1992 when George Kuhnel, one of the founder of Intercontinental Bering Strait Tunnel and Trailer Group, invited me to participate in the international conference on Washington, DC. And like Cerny, my first reaction was very emotional, and I thought that it's a crazy project for crazy people. And since that time, together with Cerny and George Kuhnel and other people, I passed a long way, and now I believe that it's one of the most outstanding project in the field of infrastructure over the world, and this project has to be realized. And I want to say some words why now he is even more actual than more than 100 years ago, when this idea was firstly published by French and Russian engineers. Presentation, first slide, please. So, first of all, our population continue to grow, and up to 2060, we overcome the 10 billion people on the Earth. Next, please. Next, please. And the distribution of this population always was uneven, and looks at this slide, you can see that we have built the civilization of coastal type. And there are a lot of historical reasons for it. But now the continuance of such kind of distribution has some problems. Many of them you can see at the next slide. Density of population, evident ecological problems connecting with the density, limitation with the territory available for the industrial and social development, resources available because the main part of these resources are concentrated or in inland territories or in sea, but not at the coastal territories now. Infrastructural limitations and global climate change corresponding with the fact that the level of the world ocean will grow. And so the territory available will be even less than now. All these problems are well known, and I will illustrate only, next slide please, the distribution of resources. You can see that even now the main part of resources concentrated in inland territories, despite the fact that these territories are absolutely insufficiently investigated from the geological point of view. Then we can look at maybe several scenarios. I will not include the catastrophic one, because like war on some kind of asteroid impact, generally we can continue to develop the coastal type of civilization, or to try to involve in the economical and industrial development the inland territories. For both scenarios, we have the key role, the key factor will be infrastructure factor, because you have to create good infrastructure to use these territories as kind of sources of resources and reservation territories. And of course, you can build the infrastructure if we decide to develop these territories as main reserve for more even distribution of population and to involve all territories which is suitable for life in the economical and industrial development. Next slide, please. Now, if you look at the world railroads and seaports, you can see that the railway network couldn't play the essential role in the intercontinental trade, and most of the mercantile trade concentrated to the sea transportation. If you, next please. If you look at the road distributions, you can see essentially more dense network, but unfortunately roads is efficient only for the distance not more than 500 to 700 kilometers, and they're not very efficient and suitable for big distances. Next, please. Now 62% of all freight, this is sea transportation, and only 9% is rail transportation. Next, please. And now about the project. The project, it is, of course, not only the Bering Strait crossing, but it's the railroad between existing railroad system in Russia and North America. You have to build the road from Yakutsk to Fort Nelson. It's about 600,000 kilometers. Next, please. And this territory is really huge, and this territory have very low population, and this territory has a huge deposits of mineral and other kind of resources. Next, please. You can see the total length of the road. This is about 400 by Russian territories and about 4,000 by Russian territory and about 2,000 by Canada and by Canada territories, Alaska and Canada. The length of the possible length of Bering Tunnel is from 98 to 113 kilometers. It depends on the project. So next, please. The nature give us a shift because the engineering geological condition under the Bering Strait is suitable enough. Not big seismic, the depths not more than 37 meters, and we have two islands between Chukotka and Alaska that also can be used for the to build the tunnel. Next, please. When this project will realize, all world railroads will be work as a unit system. We have only 7 main barriers, and I think that up to time when this project will be realized, some of these points also will not be barriers. Next, please. Mr. Cerny said about the advantages of railroad transportation comparing with the existing seaways. Here, I illustrate this fact by the road between 2 inlet points, one in China, next to the second in United States, Harbin Chicago or Harbin Vancouver. You can see that the road between these points not only shorter by railroad, and not only take essentially less time, but the cost, if we will try to use the tariff, the tarification, nowadays tarification, should be less if we use rail transport than nowadays existing railroad plus sea transportation. The same in Harbin, Vancouver. Next, please. I have to say that the project now is not only the railroad, double track, full electrified, high-speed railway main line, the Yakutsk, Zaryanka, Orient, Wells, Fairbanks, Fort Nelson. This is a key element of project, but also we are discussing the power transmission line, transit capacity 12 to 15 gigawatt, that could to join the 2 systems, North America and Russian systems. This it gives us a big economical effect. Also, fiber optic cable, oil and gas pipeline, and highway connected highway in the same corridor as with railroad main line. Next, please. The estimation of investment, of course, changed all this time, and 2 years ago, the project of total transcontinental railroad estimation cost was about $50 billion US. Railroad 15 to 18, and Bering Strait tunnel from 25 to 30 billion. Roughly, you can estimate it as $3 million per kilometer for railroad, close to estimation, to nowadays estimation. And the cost of tunnel also close to the real cost of existing tunnels. Totally, if you include all other parts of projects, it could be about $19 billion. The economical models, I have to say that last 10 years, there were built about 5 economical models of this project, but all of them gave the payback period not more than 25 years, and IRR not less than 10%. That really big for such kind of mega project.
Dr. Razbegin, please come to conclusion.
Yes, 2 minutes, please. Next slide. Finally, the transcontinental mainline with the tunnel through the Bering Strait at the global level is a key element of the entire world support network of rivers, opening up the possibilities of more efficient, fast, safe, all-season and cheaper transportation, about 100 million tons of cargo for international and regional trade, as well as transcontinental passenger traffic. Access to colossal natural resources, the development of huge territories for comfortable living. A unique joint project of peaceful, this project is a really unique joint project of peaceful cooperation between the leading countries like Russia, USA, China, Canada, South Korea, Japan, India, and so on. At national level, expansion of the rail network, as a result of which the territories which are now in isolation, like territories of most of Russia as well as Alaska, will get the conditions for their sustainable socio-economic development, and about the possibility of creating a system of highways, providing additional opportunities for combining electric power networks, new sources of generation like tidal hydroelectric power plants, building pipelines and road communication, and its additional effects of this project. And next, please. I'm close to the finish. In reality, both countries, Russia and the United States, now made the decision which made this project closer to reality. So you can see the Donald Trump decision about permission for cross-border rail between Alaska and Canada. And then, next please. Here is a map of national strategy of Russian railroads development up to 2030. You can see all our project at this map, and now we in Russia came to Yakutsk, and up to the 2027, we are planning to go to Magadan via Zryanka. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Razbegin, for deepening our understanding even more. I don't know if after these two profound presentations, we have any engineering questions. It looks like everything is covered and well explained. Thank you. Now, allow me to invite our next speaker, Dr. Peter Stockdale, a policy analyst specializing in environment, Indigenous, and intergovernmental affairs from Canada. Dr. Peter Stockdale, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me in the first place. That's very kind of you. I know nothing about the technical aspects of which have been covered so far. I love being on trains, but Dr. Razbegin and Mr. Cerny's knowledge is, far beyond my own. What I want to focus on is the changes that have taken place since the time Reverend Moon proposed this in 1981. So I have essentially three main points. One was around global warming. The second is regarding the basis in the proposals we've usually seen it regarding carbon. And the third is the change is in the Russian and Chinese governments particularly, but even the American one, regarding their support for the link. So on the first point, on the global warming thing, the Strait has obviously become more ice-free. There's more permafrost melting. Siberia is very warm, as Nazarova had previously mentioned. And we have on this route now the prospect of tremendous global warming effects on any route that is made. And so the likelihood of tracks being flooded along the northern slope and in Siberia is much, much higher than when it was proposed 40 years ago. And so, and indeed, we can imagine if the track is not done sooner, much available capital will go towards funding the flooding of various coasts from Florida to Europe. And so it would be, there's an impulse towards doing this sooner than later. The second part is about the carbon industry basis for the proposal. As you see it, it looks much more like about shipping carbon as much as it is about peace. And obviously that's the peace part, which I'm keen on, is what is the most solid part about it and remains, if you like, the guiding light. But the proposal, as it has been really often between one petrostate, Russia, to another petrostate, the United States, to another petrostate, Canada, you know, traveling from in Canada, Eden to El Paso in Texas. It's a lot about coal, a lot about oil, but that's not a good basis for a survivable future, as I think as all of our forests burn up, we're beginning to figure that out. The third point is about the change in the disposition of the different national governments towards this proposal. There was no support on the parts of the Russian government or the Chinese government or the American government. And as Dr. Razbegin has shown, that's beginning to change. But in the case of China, the Belt and Road Initiative has come on since there. There's an enormous enthusiasm on the part of the Chinese government, and their technical capacity, or their rail links are second to none at this point. But I think what's critical is that the Chinese are willing to put tens of billions of dollars into this now, and the Russian government is also willing to put tens of billions in now. Obviously, this would strengthen Russian, US, Korean alliance, but many of the products would be Chinese. A key thing about the Belt and Road Initiative itself is that it eliminates blockades by navies, the choke points, the ways to prevent peaceful exchanges of goods and peoples would be eliminated. And this, for the Chinese government, is one of the very important parts about the Belt and Road. The American Navy is unnecessary or useless in this respect. But it also, if you're looking at from an American government perspective, it favors within that government, if you like, Treasury, Trade, State Department compared with the Pentagon, for example. Something we need to understand is the way states have changed since 1981. Of course, at that time, there was a Soviet Union, and that has changed. But the nation state in North America likewise has changed. And indigenous people, long suppressed by the settlers like me, have now had a flourishing. They have been allowed to be formally educated. They practice their own spiritual practices, which had been suppressed, and they are becoming actors. And I noticed that within the Intercontinental Railway project, for example, Craig Fleener is amongst your team. Now, to go back slightly to the train piece, as the Biden government has just put in $66 billion for Amtrak, which had been pretty dead as a mode of transport within the United States. So therefore, it may be easier to get the Biden government engaged in this than has been the case for many a long year. But I think the key part from a business perspective is to make a new business case, one which is not going to simply produce carbon, oil, and gas extraction and facilitate that, and also to avoid deforestation, because that is, when you put in a railway or any road, that means that whatever is near it gets pulled into that system. So what is going to be pulled into that system? Is it going to be circumpolar mining? Is it going to be Yukon zinc? Is it going to be containers? More likely. Tourism? More likely. Fish farming? More likely. The last salmon rivers will be those along the Arctic coasts, although the Yukon River has been at historic lows as far as its salmon catching this year. So focus on the circumpolar aspect, I'm thinking. Indigenous people and more polar states are more active players than they have been in the past. And I note that our current Governor General in Canada is Mary Simon. She's Inuit, and she headed the Inuit Circumpolar Conference. And she's, although the Governor General as such is usually a ceremonial role, Mary Simon is not. She is an active diplomat. And so there may be a possibility there, I'm suggesting, for this project. Now, so pay attention to the circumpolar is what I'm saying, not simply think of this in terms of nation states making agreements and the changing nature of the nation state itself. In other words, there are actors below those high capitals. So on that, I end, and I see I have 11 seconds to stop, and so I will. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stockdale, for bringing up many important issues connected to the construction of the Bering Strait Tunnel. It really has so many different sides which must be considered. And I'm sure that now, during the Q&A session, everybody will have more opportunity to share your insights about the projects. So let us start with a question. Let's say we have few questions from different countries, from like Switzerland, Russia, from different places. And people are asking about permafrost and the way it is connected to the building the tunnel. Like, for example, one question, some believe that due to climate changes, the permafrost in which it will be necessary to build a rail link to the Bering Strait in Russia and to Alaska in America will melt, making it impossible to use the railroad tracks. Their innovation will result in high costs. Is the construction of a tunnel justified in this case? And another question is about, do you think that climate change might have an effect on the feasibility of the Bering Strait Tunnel and railway project? So whoever feels like answering The floor is yours.
I can make some comments on that. As I mentioned in my talk, permafrost is an issue that's been handled, and in the situation to Tibet, this was a borderline permafrost condition, which is exactly the type of condition which would be created. And again, there's ways of handling this, and it's not like this is going to happen like, you know, at one point in the future, all the permafrost is going to melt. It's something that the conditions will change, and those changing conditions can be handled as they happen. I mean, the idea that the whole of Siberia would kind of disappear if the permafrost melted, of course, is not correct. And as far as the tunnel itself, most of it, and I think close to all of it, Dr. Razbegin may have additional comments on this, is through rock. And a lot of Siberia, the rock is a certain distance below the surface, and so that's a situation which is not affected directly by permafrost. Again, the tunnel can be built probably year-round, because what the situation 150 feet underground is not going to be any different in the winter as it is in the summer. So I think the permafrost question is one that the engineering solutions would have to be adapted to what the situation was, but there's no indication that there would be any creation of a situation where there would be an unsolvable problem. I mean, on the railway to Tibet, in some cases, what's happened is you've got some kind of a supporting structure like piling that goes down to solid rock or down to permafrost at a depth which, you know, it's not expected to be affected for, you know, perhaps 500 or 1,000 years or more. So again, there's engineering solutions, and the idea that somehow there's no way of doing that, I think is not correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, please, Dr. Razbegin.
Yes, I quite agree with Mr. Cerny that permafrost is not the biggest problem for creation of this railroad and tunnel too. First of all, we in Russia and also Alaska, Canada has and China also have now a big experience in the field of construction of roads and railroads in the permafrost condition. Also, we have to take account that for the most part of this future line, the permafrost condition is quite good because the permafrost in the region of Yakutia, for example, it's more than 500 meters deep, has deeper, more than 500 meters. So only in the coastal region we can have some problem connecting with the potential warming and climate change. But the experience of construction in the region, or in the North Coastal region in Russia and Alaska, give a chance to build this railroad quite safety. And I think that if we will use all our nowadays knowledge and the knowledge that we get in future, in close future, I think we will build this railroad in permafrost quite safety and quite efficiently.
Thank you, Dr. Razbegin. We have a question from Maria Smatryanska. from a research fellow from the International Institute IFIMES. The question is, considering current Sino-Russia-American tense political and economic relations, what are the real possibilities of synergy of China's Belt Road with European 10T and the future American A2A project? So it's a difficult question, but anybody?
I will try.
Please, yes.
I will try. Of course, the political problems is really the most complex problem for this project, because a lot of countries should be involved, and all of these countries have their own interests. But now you can see that China starts a big infrastructure project and global initiative like One Belt, One Way. And since the European, as I know, proposed to the President of the United States to include the United States in this into this initiative and to join the railroad network of North America to the system of Eurasian continent. As you understand, the only way to make it is to use the Bering Strait. So even now, this project could be. We could look at this project as a part of the global project of world network connection. And the idea of One Belt project is that the infrastructure and world network system should stimulate the development of industry and development of economical and social economical development. So the idea of this project is strictly the same, because this project not only this project is not the just commercial project. This project of joining the economics and I say more civilization of North America and Eurasia. Of course, the political climate now maybe not the most suitable for this project, but I think that if we will work together, people from this country and governments from our countries together discussing this project, I think that we will also change and political climate too, because it's really a very good example, outstanding example of what advantages we can get for all countries if we will work together. As I always said, I always repeat the words of why war, why not a big project, a set of the senator of Alaska.
Thank you, Dr. Razbegin. Anybody would like to add anything? Okay, next question is about the future railway operator. It's a question from Khabarovsk, Far East Russia. The road will be laid across the territory of several countries. How will this cross-border rail system be managed? At what stage is this issue now? I mean, the discussion, I guess, of this issue now, if there is any discussion.
I think that's an issue for the future. I mean, right now we're discussing about the ability to build this, the value of having it. Certainly, there's many ways to manage the railway, just like there are many railway companies in the United States. but yet traffic passes between those railroads in end-to-end meetings. So there's many ways to handle that issue, and I think that what is appropriate, and it also depends on how much financing there is from governmental agencies and from private industries. And so I think that the management of the railway is certainly an issue that needs to be decided on before the railway is finished. But right now, I think the important thing is to get the idea of the value of this railway out, and that type of issue will work itself out after that.
Thank you. Next question is from Lawrence Bayer to Dr. Stockdale. Could Dr. Stockdale explain more concerning his positive anticipation for the role of the new Governor General of Canada in helping to get cooperation from the Indigenous people who control much land on the way of this project?
Sure. My essential point is that subnational actors are going to be greater players than they have been in the past. And as far as the Governor General of Canada is concerned, because of her role as a diplomat, being the ambassador to Denmark, working in the Inuit Tapirasat, which is and actually the Makvik Corporation, she's very attuned to the economics aspect of national and Inuit development. So she, I think, might be approached to become interested in this project. And certainly she has the both national and international connections to facilitate that. And so that's what I would suggest.
Thank you very much. Next question, well, I guess it's for the Dr. Razbegin, but anyway, a few days ago, it was announced that a railway bridge across the Amur River between Russia and China was completed. Is this bridge becoming one more step to connect China to future Bering Strait crossing?
It's possible. There are several border stations and several ways, several roads which can used for connection this transcontinental railroad with China. Maybe I don't know if it's possible to look at the slide or the map of some kind. Okay, no. So one of them is the bridge via Amur River in Ленинск, Тинзян, and Благовещенsk, near Благовещенsk, but also we can use the existing cross-border station and cross-border lines. Any case, of course, one of the main part of total cargo will be cargo from Asia to North America and back, and China will play a leading role in this cargo by this transcontinental main line.
Thank you. Another question is about rail gauges. I guess Mr. Cerny, he mentioned about this in his speech. Maybe this is a question for him. Rail gauges in Russia and in America, Canada are of different sizes. Some believe that this will greatly increase the cost of using the railroad in this case. How justified are such statements?
As pointed out, you've got in the talk, you've got the same gauge in North America, in China, and in Korea. And then you have a gauge that is slightly wider in Russia. And there's several ways that this could be taken care of. One is by using vehicles on this route that can change gauge. As many of you probably know, this type of train already exists. Many of you may have ridden the train from Paris to Madrid, and in the middle of the night, without stopping, the train actually changed gauges from 4 foot 8.5 inches to 5 foot 6 inches. So it's obviously, from the standpoint of North America to China traffic in Korea, it's best, it would be cheapest if it went on standard gauge. But that there's, as in any case like this, there's going to be political considerations. And so there's two types of general solutions. One is to design the vehicles so that they can have the gauge be changed in case, even in motion. I mean, now that doesn't mean it's going to go through at 70 miles an hour and change the gauge, but that it could be taken through some type of apparatus, maybe 5 or 10 miles an hour, that would change the gauge on the equipment mechanically. And then the second, and it's one that's already in use in a few places, is dual gauge track, which basically would have 4 rails. 2 of the rails being for the Russian gauge and 2 of the rails being for the Chinese or North American gauge. So again, these are the situations. Again, there's a lot of things which, things which need to be resolved and may be resolved in different ways. The political situation may be different in 10 to 20 years. The Russians may want a dual gauge to get to Alaskan ports, for instance. They may say, well, can we run dual gauge through the tunnel so we could take Russian equipment into Alaskan ports? And that's a possibility. And then from the other end, you could say that the North American interest would want to be able to take their equipment without gauge change to China and Korea. So there's several technical solutions to this. I think they're doable. So in other words, that there is an engineering answer to that, but what that engineering answer is will depend on political situations and others when the thing is constructed. So again, it's a problem that's solvable in an engineering manner, and it's something where the technology has been getting better through the years. So I think that's the answer for now to that question. In other words, there is an engineering solution. We can build equipment that has variable gauge, or we can have dual gauge track.
Thank you, Mr. Cerny. And the next question is about environment. I guess this is to Dr. Stockdale. From Anton from Siberia Environment Protection Association. So the question is, at first glance, it looks like the Bering Strait tunnel itself is relatively safe for the environment. However, creating thousands of miles of roads and railways in virgin territories in Russia and America seems very dangerous for the environment. How to avoid the environmental damage when building railways and roads? Please turn on your mic. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Any railway or road is going to impact the nature around it. There's no getting around it from that perspective. And so it will have some terrible aspects. And I see a message, question from Lawrence also on migratory species, and that's certainly been a very important question as far as caribou herds with the American North Slope. The matter of how does one avoid having those impacts being too great, well, you go down below or you go above if you can. You avoid the migratory routes as much as you possibly can. But they can have terrible effects. Can they be avoided? I think it will only be the doing of the thing which will answer that question.
Thank you. Mr. Cerny, yeah, you wanted to also add. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's important to look at the overall environmental effect of the project too. And certainly the idea would be that it would be built in a way that would be as sensitive as possible to those issues. But one of the ideas of this project is to replace a portion of the ocean trade. And the railways, because they are can be electrified, it makes it much easier to not use fossil fuels on the railway than it is for ocean shipping. And then, if you project into the future what the ocean shipping would be without the Bering Strait, you're talking about a lot of port facilities and things which would also affect ecological areas. So it's very important that the project be a green project, and I think that it certainly will. And it's also important to look at the positive environmental effects it will have over using the railway for intercontinental shipping versus oceans with the ocean transport and the ports.
Thank
Fair
you.
points.
Yeah, thank you. Next question, and maybe it might be the last. Let's see. It's a question. Okay, China has shown interest in building a tunnel across the Bering Strait and the branch line to link existing rail lines. How do Russia, the USA, and Canada view the involvement of China? Are there any negotiations with the involvement of specialists from the United States, Russia, Canada, and China at the present time? Yes, please. Yeah, Dr.
I would just say that, oh, excuse me, go ahead, Dr. Razbegin. Okay, I was going to say that certainly the cooperation and expertise from any country is welcome on this project, with certainly not the idea to keep out ideas from other countries. And certainly if China would feel it wanted to be part of the financing of that, that would be very good also.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I can add that I have said that at the working level, the contacts between specialists and specialists in the railroad construction, tunnel construction, and as the specialists in the investments nowadays, not nowadays, but it started some years ago with participation China specialists, Korean specialists, European specialists, United States, Russia, and so on. So at working level, we have good contacts. At political level, it's a question more for politics, but we know that some initiatives about the common projects, joint projects in the area of infrastructure area are really discussed firstly between China and Russia, for example.
Thank you. Dr. Stockdale, would you like to add anything about Canada? No, okay. Okay, then I think we still have time, if you don't mind, for maybe one more question. Okay, the question is, are there any geological difficulties in building the tunnel, considering that it would be located close to the Lermontov Ridge?
Excuse me?
Are there any geological difficulties in building the tunnel, considering that it would be located close to the Lermontov Ridge?
Generally, up to now, I have to say all the results of preliminary engineering geological investigation under the Bering Strait showed us that the condition is quite suitable for construction. There are no big seismic, that no some kind of big cracks and so on. And the depth of sea is almost the same along all distance of the tunnel. So I don't think that there are some special hardness, special problems connecting with this reason mentioned by our host. I don't know about it. But I have to say that preliminary general engineering geological investigation was organized in Russia in 1995 and 1998. So we have some preliminary results.
Okay, thank you. So if you would like to say anything in conclusion of our webinar, or because we are coming to the end of the webinar, does anybody want to share the last few words? Okay, otherwise then we are coming to the end of our webinar, and I would like to thank all our panelists for their presentations and great answers. Me personally I enjoyed very much, and I'm sure all our participants who heard very profound answers. Now for many of us it became more clear and feasible about the project. And actually, I like the idea about the possible date of completion, the tunnel under the Bering Strait, to be April 2045, which Mr. Cerny suggested, which I believe would mark like a new history, not only in relationship between the USA and Russia, but in the history of peace for the whole world. Allow me to finish the webinar with words of our founder of UPF, Dr. Moon. The words are the follows. The Great Silk Road was not only a commercial path for people who sold silk and bought spices. This road served as a means of conducting dialogue between peoples who lived in East and West, and contributed to bringing Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity closer to each other. All these cultures mixed and gave birth to a new one. The International Highway Project will play the same role in 21st century. I think we all share this hope. Now I would like to all our panelists to appear again on the screen and wave and say thank you to all our participants, all our listeners who heard this, who listened this webinar. And I would like to invite everyone for our tomorrow's new program, next program, which is going to be at 10 a.m. Central European Time. And the topic of the webinar will be prospects for the Northeast Asian Economic Union. Thank you very much, and see you around future programs. Thank you.